RCN, a company of Allianz Global Investors, brings you the Asia Pacific Index Report. Asia Pacific Index Report is brought to you by RCN, a company of Allianz Global Investors.
Bloomberg Television puts the spotlight on Islamic finance Tuesdays on Morning Call. Islamic bond sales are set to rise to a record this year. The industry is expanding across Asia. Markets and companies around the world are altering investment rules to comply with Islamic finance regulations. Who are the major players and what are the trends? Find out when Haslinda Amin focuses on Islamic finance Tuesdays on Morning Call, only on Bloomberg Television.
Presented to you by the Malaysia International Islamic Financial Center.
You now can watch Charlie Rose around the globe, weeknights on Bloomberg Television.
China's relationship with the U.S. is crucial. It's the most important bilateral relation in the world now. And both sides have a big stake in making sure it turns out right and not turns out sour. Because your trade, your interdependence, your mutual security interests. Of course, there are issues where you will rub against one another, human rights or Google or whatever. But both sides have a greater stake in keeping it right than letting it go wrong.
Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong discussing China-US relations. He's presiding over an economy that notched up growth of more than 32% last quarter. We'll bring you more from Lee throughout the show. You're tuned to The Trade. We're coming to you live from Singapore. Hello there. Good morning. It's Friday, and I'm Haslinda Amin. As many as 5 Russian companies may follow billionaire Oleg Deripaska's Rusal and list in Hong Kong by 2012. That's according to VTB Group, Russia's second biggest lender. Rusal's listing early this year put Hong Kong in the spotlight as an alternative to London for Russian companies seeking capital. Let's get more on Russia's appetite to list in Asia. I'm joined by Jochen Wermuth, Managing Director and Founder at Wermuth Asset Management. He's based in Moscow, but he's here in Singapore on a business trip. I hope I got that name right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, why the rising appetite among Russian companies to list in Hong Kong? Is it a liquidity story, trying to tap the growth in China?
Well, the Russians have growth as high as Chinese growth, 20% in dollar terms per annum over, say, 7 years. It's a tripling of a typical company's earnings, but they're valued at 5 to maybe 3 times earnings on the second tier side, 9 times on liquid side. And so going to a Chinese market, either Hong Kong or Singapore, could get you multiples like 20 or 25.
But take a look at where the stock markets are right now. I mean, the Hang Seng, the Shanghai Composite Index, all down. Rusal also lower by 10% since its debut. Why the interest? It's not a good time to be going into such markets.
Well, it may have been a bad time to buy it at the IPO, but of course for the sellers of Rusal, they've done very well with the placement. As well as we see it, we see in Russia great value opportunities and growth. We don't have the conflict you usually have between value and growth. We expect to make 9 times or so our money over the next 7 years, and we're looking to attract investors from Australia, from China, mainland, and we think Singapore is actually the best hub. Michael Tay, the ambassador of Singapore to Russia, has brought Lee Kuan Yew to Russia several times. The president of Russia respects them greatly. They think that Singapore is a model economy for them, and I think it's a wonderful place. So we look to maybe do business both ways, bring Russian investments into the region, because Russia is a member of APEC, and also the other way around.
So having said that, are we likely to see Russian companies listing in Singapore instead?
Well, that's a proposal we're discussing at the moment with the MTI. For one of our companies, we have about $1.5 billion of assets in Russia. built up over the last 2 decades, and some of them we may well list even in Singapore, yes.
So the two cities could still be competing when it comes to attracting IPOs. I want to take a look at the Russian companies which are likely to list in Hong Kong. We're getting word that perhaps 5 more companies, and among them could be a huge company, OAO Rosneft.
Yes, this would be a dual listing. Obviously, Rosneft is a large oil producer which has the advantage of getting lots of the benefit from the pipeline into China. That company, of course, took over the assets of Yukos, one of the most productive companies. It has a Western CFO, and that company could do a listing relatively quickly.
How huge do you think the listings would be, the IPOs would be in Hong Kong?
Oh, that's difficult to say. I think it would be it wouldn't be an IPO, it would be a secondary placement. Difficult to guess what the placement is.
Okay, you being based in Moscow, how are Russian equities looking? They're among the best performers in the world.
Yes, we have, of course, Russia has had a horrible reputation. We're trying to convince people that Russia, in fact, is a normal place we can do normal business in. There are hundreds of years of good German-Russian relations. We've had 20 years of doing business without paying bribes or protection money, and returns are fantastic still. You can still buy a power plant for the price of a pickup truck, I like to say. Price earnings, as I said, 3 to 5. That's really cheap. You can buy assets at 40% of book value. Russia has a much worse reputation than Asia so far, and therefore things are very cheap, and those that dare, they can drink champagne, say the Russians.
Okay, Jochen, we have to keep it there. Jochen Wermuth, Managing Director and Founder at Wermuth Asset Management. Now, China enters what Morgan Stanley has called a new era today with the launch of an index futures trading. Paul Gordon has been looking at the story. Is the market proving popular, Paul?
Well, as Linda, we've been going now for 2 minutes. Market opened at 9:15. Here's the screen so you can see numbers ticking. This is the new era. Futures bets going through. It took about 90 seconds for the first 1,000 contracts to change hands. There are 4 contracts in there, May through to December. December's contract, 36.49. Spot for Shanghai Composite is 33.94. By my calculations, that's about a 7 or 8% upside bet on the market between now and December. By next month, investors looking at 34.68, 34.70 now. That again is a small increase, couple of percent over the next month or so. So the market is now finally underway, has Linda. It will be a slow start. The requirement for your brokerage account in China is $73,000 US. I make that more than 20 times the average household disposable income in China last year. And one brokerage I spoke to says, well, China's been here before, and that's why it's going to be cautious.
They've had previous experience with relation to financial futures. It just wasn't a very pleasant one for them back in the 90s. So the fact that they're taking such a measured approach and such a strict approach to who can trade it and how it trades, I think is really driven by the history of the involvement in futures industry, and also the concern that things go well.
Now, we've had futures launches in South Korea and Taiwan in recent years here in Asia. They took off. Volumes went up multiple times in the first couple of years. That may happen here, and the head of Hong Kong's futures exchange says it's a good thing for everybody.
The faster the mainland financial markets develop, the better for investors, for price discovery, and for all of us around the world.
So there you go, Haslinda, the new era finally underway.
A hedging tool, but it could also be used as a speculative tool. Stay tuned to The Trade. Our regular Forex segment is up next. So if you have any Forex trading questions, you know what to do. Trade with Haas at Bloomberg.net or message The Trade on the Bloomberg terminal. We're back in 2. Stay with us.
The JP Morgan 2010 Corporate Challenge Singapore. Go online today to register your company. Celebrating 7 years in Singapore. The 2010 JP Morgan Corporate Challenge brings colleagues together to promote teamwork and camaraderie. JP Morgan, doing first-class business in a first-class way. BNP Paribas, the bank for a changing world.